I was bullied for 2 years. I just found out that I and the person who was bullying me were actually the real and fake daughters who had been switched at birth. I thought this was a turning point in my life. I thought it was my chance to turn things around, but instead, they joined forces to push me off the rooftop, and I died in pain. As I lay dying, the young man I had once loved and the bully were both kneeling before me. The young man spoke in his usual gentle tone, but his words were very cruel. "Is that all, Ava? Your life isn't worth much, is it?" The bully leaned close to my ear and whispered, sounding very proud, "Ava, even if you're the real heiress, it doesn't matter. Sterling's parents are right there watching, and they didn't even react. You're a worthless piece of trash who couldn't even pass the college entrance exam. You deserve to die. Living is just a disgrace to us." Smack! A sharp pain shot across my face. A rude curse echoed from above, "You worthless brat. I told you to watch him. You're nothing but trouble." I took a few steps back and lifted my head to look at the dark, ugly face in front of me. It was both familiar and unfamiliar. It was my foster father, David. Wasn't he already dead? Before I could think, a storm of punches and kicks hit me. After a while, he finally stopped, muttering curses as he walked away. I curled up in the cold corner, my clothes soaked through with cold sweat. A few moments later, as I looked around the old, but somehow familiar, small room, I finally started to cry. I had been reborn. I was reborn on the same day 1 year after I had been bullied in my previous life. At this point, my right eye was still fine. At that time, my mischievous younger brother Leo fell into the river while playing and got very sick. My adoptive parents, David and Susan, liked boys more than girls. They locked me in the woodshed and scolded me for not watching him properly. I was locked up there for the whole night. One night, a stranger broke into my room. He wanted to attack me. I fought back with all my strength, knocking him out, but in the process, I permanently lost my right eye. At first, I thought it was just an accident, but later I realized it was a cruel trick by my adoptive parents to deal with loan sharks who had come demanding repayment. They used the injury to my right eye as an excuse to go to the police station and cause a scene, ultimately getting a large sum of money from the loan sharks. I had a hard time getting up from the cold, muddy ground. I turned to the mirror next to me. The mirror reflected a clear, beautiful face. The dark eyes seemed to hold an everlasting darkness, deep and filled with evil. I wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth and smiled coldly. I found the axe in the corner and swung it at the closed door of the woodshed. Now that I was back, I felt like they all deserved to go to hell. When he stepped out of the woodshed, the courtyard and the house were empty. I threw away the axe and went straight to my foster parents' room. At that time, the three of them had all gone to the hospital. They said Leo was drowning, but really they were trying to avoid the people who wanted to collect the debt. They wouldn't be back anytime soon. The David family was very poor. In the entire village, their house was the only one made of mud. David was an alcoholic and a gambler, and Susan was lazy and always on the move. The family was already in a lot of debt. Susan had originally hated this family because they were too poor, so she had secretly swapped children with the rich Sterling family next door. I looked at the sad sky outside and searched the old black wardrobe for the money Susan had hidden. There was no point in staying in this house anymore. It would be better to go back to the Sterling family, where I could more easily carry out my revenge plan. As I left, I took out the Hershey's Kisses chocolates I had been saving for a long time from my backpack. I wrote a small note, slipped it into one of the wrappers, and placed it in my younger brother Leo's pencil case. He collects money from people he owes money to. I lowered my eyelashes to hide the emotions that were showing in my eyes. "My dear brother, please don't let me down." It was too late to catch the bus back to town. I walked all night and finally made it back to school. The next morning, I took the $300 I had scrounged from Susan and went to a nearby mall to buy a voice recorder. Then I went into a phone booth and called the same number I always call. In my previous life, the truth about Olivia, also known as Shinming Zhu, and me being switched as fake sisters was exposed because Sterling's business rival had played a dirty trick. They kidnapped Olivia, and when she was rushed to the hospital because she was losing a lot of blood, it was discovered that she wasn't Sterling's biological daughter. The Sterling family would never let their family name be left outside the family, so they did everything they could to find me. After I returned to the Sterling family, I thought they would feel sorry for me because of all the suffering I had endured over the years, but what I received instead was, I closed my eyes, and my hands shook a little as I held the phone receiver. the phone finally rang. A voice sounded bored and a little annoyed from the other end. Who is this? If there's nothing, I'm hanging up. Don't bother me while I'm busy. I made sure to speak calmly and clearly, saying each word slowly and deliberately. The development project in the West District. I can help you get it. But there's one condition, you must agree to my request. The lazy voice on the other end got a little louder before laughing at the idea. Little girl, do you even know what that project is? I don't have time to play games with you this early in the morning. Hang up, Jackson, I said firmly. Lucas is going to be shot at the Red Flame Bar tonight at 9. If you save him, it will clearly benefit your night family, right? There was a brief moment of silence on the other end. I continued calmly. If you trust me, meet me at the park near Crestview High School tomorrow at noon. Without waiting for a response, I ended the call. I fixed the wrinkles in my school uniform and left the mall. There was no way I could just go to the Sterling house and say I was their long-lost child. They would think I was crazy and kick me out. The only option was to make Olivia's murder happen sooner. As I left the mall, I saw a black luxury car parked by the roadside. The window slowly rolled down, revealing a face that was both noble and cold. I felt my breath catch in my throat. I felt a fear that seemed to come from the very depths of my bones. This fear froze my blood in an instant. Lucas, my ex-boyfriend, Ethan's older brother, the devil who once trapped me in a dark basement and locked me up with cold iron chains, that pervert. He seemed to sense something, and his sharp gaze shot straight at me. I made myself stop feeling the storm inside me, lowered my head, and hurried toward the school. In class, my desk was messy, and my chair had sticky glue on it. Without saying a word, I took out some tissues from my backpack, picked out a few dead cockroaches and spiders from the desk drawer, and threw them onto Olivia's desk across from me. Then, I threw a textbook onto the chair, ignored the puzzled looks from the others, and sat down. These cheap tricks. In the past, I had kept quiet because I couldn't do anything about it and I didn't want to ruin my future for some low-level criminals, so I chose to settle for a less than ideal situation. But now, I no longer need to put up with it. Ava, you're great. A voice full of hidden anger came from the desk across from me. Olivia's face went pale, and her beautiful features became distorted with anger. I put on a cold smile. Thank you for the compliment. She suddenly stood up, grabbed the books on the desk, and tried to throw them at me, but the teacher walked in and she had to stop. Olivia glared at me angrily and mouthed the words quietly. You bitch, you'll pay for this after class, I replied with a smile, my eyes showing that I was ready to stand up for myself. As soon as class ended, she hurried over to me, looking angry, and raised her hand to slap me. I quickly grabbed her wrist, but I couldn't smile. Olivia, I thought you were just jealous of me because I'm better than you, so you've been picking on me and targeting me, but now I see that it's not just jealousy, you have a violent tendency. After all, the evil nature in your genes is hard to change. I didn't miss the brief look of panic in Olivia's eyes, and I made a cold snort. She seemed to be more than she appeared. You're talking nonsense. If you don't want to get expelled, just go to the bathroom. She glared at me with a fierce expression, her tone full of obvious threats. The bathroom? That's okay. I tilted my head slightly, and after she gave me a satisfied look, I followed her toward the bathroom. Behind her were a group of her henchmen, trying to scare me. The people inside the bathroom saw the commotion and ran out in a panic. To them, it was nothing new to see me being bullied by Olivia and her group. Some people tried to help me before, but Olivia's henchmen attacked and hurt them badly. Olivia had the teachers and school administrators ignore her actions because of the Sterling family's influence. Over time, being bullied had become normal at my school. Nobody dared to help me. Apart from Ethan occasionally approaching me without saying a word, there was only Chloe left. Hey, girl, go in there. I was pushed into the bathroom by a strong force. They locked the door from the outside right away. I looked at the girl with a mean look and a tall, strong body. She was Cheryl, Olivia's top helper. She always beat me up until I was covered in bruises. Olivia crossed her arms, trying to look down on me from above, but she was shorter than me, so she tilted her head back and glared at me with a mean expression. Ava, you've become quite bold, haven't you? You've only been back in your house for a day, and you've already started to clean it up? How dare you talk to me like that? I see you're eager for a beating. I looked at the mop handle in the corner, then at the 5 people in front of me, who all looked angry. Suddenly, I smiled. Itchy skin? I wouldn't do that. I'm too delicate to do that. I heard that only animals have such thick skin. Who are you calling an animal? Olivia got really angry, then signaled the 4 henchmen around her. Suddenly, the 4 of them surrounded me. As usual, they grinned evilly and tried to grab my hair. I quickly moved out of the way of their hands and walked back towards the corner. I looked calm and composed. Whoever it applies to, that's who it's meant for. Saying you're animals is actually a compliment. As I moved to the corner, I stopped and slowly took off my school uniform jacket. When they saw this, they all stopped moving for a moment. Then, Cheryl sneered, her eyes showing contempt. We're not like those disgusting men who would beg for mercy by taking off their clothes. It's too late. The 4 girls smiled evilly and kept coming toward me. Olivia, standing nearby as usual, crossed her arms, watched the spectacle with glee, and even added fuel to the fire, since she wants everyone to admire her ugly body. We'll grant her wish. All right. Their loud laughter echoed through the small bathroom, sounding particularly harsh. Just as they were about to touch me, I suddenly grabbed the mop handle behind me and wrapped one end of it around my school uniform jacket. I licked my dry, cracked lips, and my eyes turned fierce as I swung the stick at them with all my strength. They didn't expect me to fight back. I knocked them to the ground before they could react. By the time they understood what was happening, my stick was already hitting them hard. For a moment, the air was filled with loud screams and the dull thuds of the stick hitting their bodies. She's gone mad. Ava's gone mad. Olivia, quick, go tell the teacher. Sharp shouts mixed with cries of pain, and the scene quickly became chaotic. They tried to defeat me, but I evaded their attacks. I swung the stick in my hand, hitting their weak spots. Before long, the 4 bullies who had been so arrogant and controlling in the past were lying on the ground, curled up in pain, crying in agony. In my previous life, after Chloe handed me over to Lucas, that psychopath, he would take me to a dark basement every day and teach me how to beat and kill people. Then, he would throw me into an arena like an animal, forcing me to fight to the death against desperate, ruthless madmen. If it weren't for Ethan's appearance later, which made me less cautious, how could I have been so easily pushed off the rooftop and died such a sad death? I hate Olivia and the other bullies for being so cruel. I hate Lucas the psychopath for his cruel torture, but what I hate most is Ethan and Chloe, that brother and sister duo, for completely betraying me. After dealing with those 4 henchmen, I glared coldly at Olivia, who was trying to run toward the door. She didn't expect the door she had locked to trap her. Olivia shook as she tried to open the door, but she couldn't. When I suddenly appeared in front of her, she finally stopped, looking upset. She looked at me with anger. What do you want? I'm warning you, Ava, if you lay a finger on me, the Sterling family will never forgive you. Then you'll have to quit Crestview High School and go back to your poor hometown to marry an old man. I grabbed her collar and pushed her against the cold wall, but I still had a gentle smile on my face as I spoke slowly and clearly. Do you think you can report this now? I heard that when someone's unlucky, even something as simple as going to the bathroom can lead to an accidental fall, leaving them bruised and battered. Do you think someone might die from falling in the bathroom? Olivia's lips moved without her control, and her eyes, which had been full of pride, now showed a little fear. She stopped for a second, as if my words had shocked her. Then she tried to calm down and shouted, "Murder? Murder is against the law. Do you dare kill someone in the bathroom? You'll be in prison forever. Your life is completely ruined." The quiet bathroom suddenly filled with a soft laugh. My lips parted, and I smiled wider. How amusing. So you know what the law means after all? Every time I was beaten so badly in the bathroom that I almost died. What did she tell the teacher? The bathroom is slippery because it is wet. Falling is normal. I'll take the blame for that. She had the support of the Sterling family. To them, someone like me, a regular person with no power, was less than human. Bullying me wasn't even considered a crime. I've never been in prison, so I don't know what it's like. Under her amazed eyes, my hand gently touched her neck through her school uniform. Then, I suddenly tightened my grip. She grabbed my wrists and tried to break free. I looked at her pale face, which was red from not getting enough oxygen. Her breathing was getting faster and faster. Suddenly, a bad smell filled the air. Olivia was so scared that she wet herself. I released her with disgust and contempt, tossing her to the ground like trash. Olivia, you're a disgrace. This is just the beginning, and you're already overwhelmed? Olivia, the pain you caused me was far worse than this. How could you give up so easily? I threw away the dirty school uniform jacket in my hand, ignoring the hateful glare from behind me, opened the bathroom door, and walked out. When I looked at a figure ahead, I suddenly stopped walking and my body trembled slightly. Not far away, a thin person in a blue and white school uniform was leaning against the wall. His handsome face showed the vitality of the new day. The small hairs on his forehead made him look kind and elegant, like a prince from a comic book. "Ethan, we meet again. You seem to be doing well now." "Unfortunately, I'm not doing well at all. Since we're both going to hell, we can't escape." I looked down, trying to hide the anger in my eyes, and, as usual, I stood up straight and walked forward, acting strong. "Ava, did someone bully you again?" A soft, pleasant voice sounded next to me. Right away, I felt a cool sensation on my wrist. I looked down and saw him giving me a box of band-aids. I looked up and saw his kind, caring eyes, but if you looked closely, you could see a hint of coldness and amusement under that worried look. He was putting on a great show. In my past, I had seen him as the only light in my life. I had seen him in such a positive way that I was tricked by him. "Ethan, since you enjoy playing this redemption and being redeemed game so much, then fine, I'll play along until the end. Just make sure you hold on until the very end." "Thank you," I said, looking away and acting shy. My cheeks were a little red, and my voice was shaking with nervousness, but my eyes showed that I was very excited and happy, like a young girl in love, somewhere between shy and excited when she's with her boyfriend. Ethan's dark, deep eyes showed a hint of curiosity. He looked at me for a few seconds, then smiled gently and touched my hair like he always did. Then he gave me a piece of strawberry-flavored hard candy. Life is bitter, but eating candy makes it sweet. "Ava, everything will be okay." He didn't mention what happened in the bathroom, as if he didn't want to upset me again, showing he was thinking about me. If I was the same person I was in the past, I would have been deeply moved by this. I would have thought that my beloved was such a gentle and detail-oriented perfect boy. Now that I think about it, the more Olivia and the others bullied me, the more opportunities he had to act like the hero in front of me, the better he treated me, the more Olivia, who was secretly in love with him, would take it out on me. What an interesting cycle. I held the candy tightly, looking at him with a smile. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a figure coming up behind him, and my body froze. "Ava, it's all my fault. If I were stronger, they wouldn't bully you like this," a soft, guilty voice said to me. Chloe stepped forward and put her arm around mine. Her sweet, innocent face showed real concern for me, so sincere it seemed almost too good to be true. "Those bad girls deserve what they get. I don't understand why they always pick on you. Ava, if you can't handle it, let's go to the police." Her eyes were clear and bright, and her voice was full of anger and justice for me. I used to think that having a friend like Chloe, who really cared about me, was the best thing in this sad world. But I never thought that the truth was, she was the one who was behind the bullying campaign targeting me. I don't understand. What is it about me, someone from a simple background like hers, that she finds so unacceptable? What could she possibly want that she would put on such a show for so long in front of me? Maybe people are born evil, or maybe, since they have a lot of money and power, they just see me as a toy to play with when they're bored. They like watching someone like me. I was born into a poor family, but I don't give up easily. I struggle a lot. "Ava?" Chloe shook my arm and looked at me with a puzzled expression because I hadn't spoken for a long time. I lowered my head and whispered, I'm too scared to call the police. If this matter gets worse, Olivia will certainly be ruined, but I'm afraid I'll be ruined too. The Sterling family and those other villains will never stop bothering me. Chloe, you know my family's situation. If I get expelled, my life will be completely ruined." Chloe looked briefly relieved. She stroked my head and said in a soft voice, "Don't be afraid. I'm here. They won't dare to harm you." Yes, with Chloe around, they wouldn't dare bully me so openly anymore. But every time something happened to me, Chloe would be absent. This coincidence was a bit too much. "Since your friend is here, and class is about to start, you two should go back together." Ethan looked at Chloe and then said something to me in a soft voice. "A straight-A student is a straight-A student. You're really good to our Ava. I don't know how to thank you. I hope you do well in your next competition." Chloe smiled brightly, her eyes sparkling with a dazzling light. I made a rude comment to myself. How interesting. They're half-siblings, yet they both put on a great show in front of me. If they can fool the whole school, what's one more person? I acted like they were teasing me, blushing as I pulled Chloe forward a little. Then, as if I had gathered all my courage, I turned around and asked Ethan, "Ethan, after school, can you walk with me?" Ethan paused for a moment, then smiled slightly and said, I'm sorry, Ava. I have to go to a training session for a competition at noon, so we might not be going the same way. I felt a little disappointed, but I smiled and said, it's okay, and then I walked away with Chloe. I was a little sad. As a boarding student, I could only leave school and go home on Fridays, and today, Olivia, who I had embarrassed, would probably bring people to confront me after school on Friday. Since Ethan didn't want to be the unlucky one, someone else would have to take on this good fortune, wouldn't they? I looked over at the rain outside the window, and I smiled. When I went back to class, the teacher was giving out the test results from last week. I looked at my test paper, which was covered with red X's. I sighed, feeling helpless. Chloe looked at her report card, her cute face shining with joy. She had finally made it into the top 10 in her grade. She looked at my poor score and pretended to be sorry, saying, oh, if Olivia and the others hadn't been so mean, with your old skills, you would have easily made it into the top 3 in your grade. What a pity. It's just fate playing tricks on us. I looked down, feeling sad, and held the candy I was holding very tightly. A moment later, I suddenly turned my head and looked at her with a serious expression. Chloe, did Ethan take part in the Olympic knowledge competition? Do you think I could also take part in that competition? She was surprised for a moment, then gently patted my hand and encouraged me. Of course you can. I'll do my best to help you with whatever Ava wants to do. If you want to join the competition, I can help you catch up on your studies. Thank you, Chloe, you're so kind. I hugged her, but I saw a faint, unclear light in my eyes, and my lips curled up on their own. That's exactly what I was waiting to hear. In this world, how could someone not study at all in just one semester and suddenly go from being at the top of their class to thousands of places below? It was just a protective color I put on to protect myself. Ethan was proud of his grades, which made him feel confident. If one day, the confidence he was so proud of was destroyed, what would happen? I was actually looking forward to it. When school let out at noon, Olivia and the others weren't in their classroom. 9 Mountain Park. I held up a plain umbrella and slowly walked into the pavilion deep in the park. I saw a flash of bright red hair. Jackson, it's been a long time since we've seen each other. In the pavilion, a boy who looked like he was being rebellious and unruly leaned against the pillar and twirled a pen in his hand. He wore a black leather jacket that fit him well, along with ripped jeans that were all the rage, and every movement he made exuded a sense of defiance and wildness. Damn it, that guy must have stood me up, he said angrily, tapping his foot on the ground. He heard footsteps and looked up at me. His eyes showed a hint of disappointment. Then he barked at me. This is my territory. Leave. Don't make me lose my temper. Mr. Jackson, Lucas was killed last night at the Red Flame Bar, right? Jackson's eyes narrowed slightly, and he stopped acting relaxed. He started to look at me closely, from my head to my toes. I put away my umbrella and smiled at him. I must be crazy to believe a kid like you. Lucas wasn't even at the Crimson Flame Bar last night. Are you trying to trick me? Lucas didn't go to the Crimson Flame Bar? My eyebrows moved up a bit. This didn't make sense. In my previous life, the gunshot wound that killed Lucas had been inflicted at that exact time. That shipment was very important to the Lancaster family. How could he not have been there? I looked up and fixed my eyes on Jackson. Jackson was slowly picking at his fingernails, looking like he didn't care about anything. My mood immediately got better. Jackson was lying. When he lied, he liked to pick at his fingernails without realizing it. It was a bad habit he couldn't break. That's too bad. Mr. Jackson doesn't believe me, so I don't have anything else to say. I let out a sigh, then turned around, opened my umbrella, and pretended to walk out of the pavilion. 1, 2, 3. I silently counted in my head. The next second, he shouted, "Stop!" Jackson shouted angrily, grabbing me and pulling me back into the pavilion. He looked at me with a confused expression, his anger turning into a fake smile. "You little brat, you're not that old, but you're pretty cunning. Lucas was killed last night, and it was a fatal wound. He's currently in the hospital. Just tell me what your purpose is." I said, "A phone. First, get me a working phone. After that, I'll explain how to get that project in the West District." "That's it?" He looked at me like he didn't believe me. I shook my head, paused for a moment, then continued, "Of course not. I'll explain exactly what to do when we talk later." Jackson paused for a moment before finally agreeing. He probably wanted to know what I planned to do with the Knight family's influence. It's hard for kids to buy cell phones without their parents knowing. I didn't meet the requirements, but Jackson did. With a cell phone, the rest of the plan would go much more smoothly. After Jackson left, I carefully hid the phone. I quickly threw all the candy and band-aids filled with false affection from my backpack into a trash can by the roadside. Dirty people give things that can only end up in the trash. During evening study hall, my homeroom teacher called me to the principal's office. This was the first time I had ever seen my biological mother. She was dressed nicely, sitting gracefully on the sofa, and drinking tea. When she saw me enter, her beautiful eyes gave me a dismissive look. Is this the person who bullied my daughter at school? The teacher and principal stood by, bowing and smiling politely, then pushed me forward without saying anything. The principal lowered his voice and said to me in a whisper, "Mrs. Sterling is our school's most important guest. Ava, I think you're smart. You know when to speak and when to keep quiet. If you make Mrs. Sterling angry, you'll be expelled from Crestview High School right away." Before I could say anything, Olivia, like a scared little bird, jumped into her mother's arms and started crying and blaming me for something she thought I had done wrong. "Mom, it was her. She choked me in the bathroom. She even beat up all my friends until they were covered in bruises. Someone with such a mean streak doesn't belong at Crestview High." Cheryl and the other few followers joined in, making things even more intense. They looked at me like I was a terrible person. It was completely ridiculous. I had hit them, and they were able to twist the truth and make things worse. It made me want to hit them again. Mrs. Sterling stood up and looked at me. A loud slap was heard throughout the office. My own mother had slapped me without asking what had happened. I covered my burning cheek and slowly lowered my head, showing no emotion on my face. Mrs. Sterling's slap was truly inexplicable. First of all, how could I have hit 5 people at the same time? Secondly, everything requires evidence. They said I hit them, and you all believed them? Where's the proof? The room went quiet. I suddenly lifted my head, my eyes red with tears, and my voice filled with anger. Is it because my family is poor and powerless that we deserve to be bullied by you wealthy people? You bullied me, and now you're even making up lies to slander me. Do you really not fear getting in trouble for what you're doing? When Mrs. Sterling saw me, her eyebrows went up a bit, and her eyes showed a mix of emotions. But then she looked back at me with a cold expression and said, "You want proof? Olivia, show her the evidence." Olivia looked at me and smiled, as if she was proud of something. Then she pointed to Cheryl and the others, and they lifted their clothes. When I beat them in the bathroom, I hit them so hard that they must think their bodies are now covered in wounds. I couldn't help but be amazed at how stupid they were. When Cheryl and the others lifted their clothes, their skin was still smooth and flawless, showing no signs of injury. The so-called evidence had quickly become a joke. "That's impossible. We're still in so much pain. How could there be no scars?" I watched them almost lose it, and I couldn't help but smile. Otherwise, why would I have gone to the trouble of wrapping the stick in clothes? Hitting someone requires aiming for the painful spots, but to make it hurt without leaving obvious marks requires some thought. I wrapped the stick in clothes for 2 reasons. First, to get rid of any fingerprints I had left on the stick, and second, to lessen the pressure between the stick and my body, making sure that the painful areas didn't leave any marks. I glared at them, my lips tightly closed, and said slowly, "They don't even have the most basic evidence, yet they dare to slander others here. I say that they bullied me. I have proof. Do you believe me?" Ignoring the strange looks from those around me, I suddenly pulled up my pant leg. Under the fabric, the skin was covered in scars that crisscrossed, both new and old wounds, with flesh peeling away. It looked horrifyingly terrifying. Olivia caused all of this by using her pink dagger. If you don't believe me, you can take that dagger and go to the hospital with me for a comparison of the wounds and testing. I then pulled up my thin school uniform, revealing the bruises on my abdomen and back. The shocking scars and purple-black bruises showed what they had done. These are the evidence left behind when they ganged up on me in the bathroom. It might be hard to believe, but they are the real bullies. This is an indisputable fact. Mom, she's lying. She's not telling the truth. I didn't do it. I didn't do any of those things. Olivia was surprised that I did this, and quickly started to explain to Mrs. Sterling. But when Mrs. Sterling saw the scars on my legs, her expression changed. Her lips, which had been a little cold, were now pressed together. She wasn't as foolish as Olivia. She was smart. She knew I was telling the truth. She glared at Olivia, who was still talking, And Olivia immediately stopped talking. It seems there has been a misunderstanding. In that case, let's just forget about it. I think Ava is a smart and sensible child. If I remember correctly, Ava's father doesn't earn a lot, and her mother doesn't work, right? My face went pale, and my slender body trembled uncontrollably. Mrs. Sterling watched me without saying anything, smiling politely. Regarding this matter, I will personally give you $10,000 as compensation. But if you hear any rumors about our Olivia outside, don't believe them. I believe that with the power of the Sterling family, it wouldn't be difficult to make an ordinary worker lose their job. This was a clear threat. I really wanted to tell her that I would be more than happy to see David lose his job. Even better, I wanted to see him ruined and never able to rise again. But I couldn't. I made myself stop feeling embarrassed and angry, took the $10,000 from her, and left angrily without looking back. At noon, after school, I was called to the principal's office. The teacher gave me a phone that was already connected. On the other end of the phone was the fake voice of my foster father. David, Ava, we just picked up your brother Leo from the hospital in the city, and we thought we'd swing by the school to pick you up too. Tell us where you are, and we'll come right over. It seems my good brother must have eaten all those candies that have something in them. How well they listen. I held the phone tightly without realizing it, and my voice sounded surprised and scared as I said, Dad, I'll get my things ready and come out right away. You wait for me at the Lai Xian restaurant near the school, and I'll be there soon. Lai Xian restaurant was on the way from school to the bus station. I ended the call and waited in the classroom for a while before picking up my old cloth bag and a few plastic bags filled with snacks. I slowly walked out of the school. At the entrance of the alley, I could hear people crying and yelling from far away. I waited there for a moment, holding the voice recorder I had found at the mall, and I looked at the dark shape in the window next to me. I hummed a cheerful tune, off key, and stepped into the dark, narrow alley, my eyes sparkling with excitement. Finally, he was here. In the narrow alley, David was fighting a group of thugs. His eyes were bloodshot. His body was covered in bruises and cuts. My so-called good brother Leo was sitting on the ground, crying loudly. My adoptive mother, Susan, who looked like a bird of prey, also attacked the thugs, clawing and biting them, but she was no match for them. One of them kicked her aside, and she curled up on the ground and moaned in pain. When I saw this very scary scene, I was so scared that I stood completely still. Let them beat him some more. Beat him to death. You're a stupid girl. What are you waiting for? Go get help. Murder, murder. In broad daylight, in the middle of the street, someone is committing murder. My foster mother, Susan, saw me and immediately started screaming at the top of her lungs. Then, she started wailing and crying hysterically. Mom, Mom, wait for me. I'll be right back. I pretended to be panicked, turning my head as if I were about to run out of the alley to call for help. But as soon as I turned around, someone pushed me hard from behind. I stumbled and fell to the ground. Olivia was standing there, looking arrogant, and she was leading a group of people who had blocked my path. She laughed hysterically and looked at him with a smirk, as if she had won. Call for help? You worthless woman. Do you think you have any chance today? My pupils got smaller quickly. Olivia, what do you want? Olivia was wearing a white princess dress. She looked like a fairy who had never touched the world of everyday people. She clapped her hands, and the thugs who had been beating David stopped. One of them even kicked David hard before moving to the side, blocking all our escape routes. She looked at David with disgust. He was lying on the ground, almost dead. When she looked at Susan, who looked just like her, she felt deep hatred. She turned her head and looked at me, smiling in a cold way. Ava, you dared to choke me and seduce the person I love. Tell me, do you deserve to die? I've been waiting for you for a long time. Today, if I don't beat you, I'll consider myself the loser. Smack. Another loud slap echoed through the alley. I was frozen. Olivia also froze. I covered my burning cheek with my hands, staring in disbelief at the woman who was now lying helplessly at my feet. Was it my foster mother? My foster mother, Susan, glared at me with hatred. She pointed her finger at my nose and shouted, I worked so hard to send you to school, not to have you bully your classmates. How could you be so cruel as to steal Olivia's boyfriend? How could you hit her? I lowered my head slowly, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. Susan, you're amazing. After beating me, Susan insulted me some more before walking away, wiping her tears, and slowly walking toward Olivia. Olivia looked at her face, which looked a lot like her own, and her eyes showed a mix of emotions before changing to a big smile. She lowered her head and said nothing. "Miss Olivia, please look. You've beaten this woman so badly, and we won't object. If we had known she had done so many things to wrong you, we would have killed her ourselves. Please be kind. It was she who offended you. Spare us and our family, will you?" I looked at her and smiled, amused at her servile, groveling expression. So she had already known the truth all along. It was worth all the effort I had put into tricking them into coming here to have this chance encounter with Olivia. "Ava, your whole family is really awful." Olivia shoved Susan to the side. Susan was still begging for her mom's attention, but Olivia was cold and mean. She seemed too lazy to talk to me anymore. She just waved her hand coldly and ordered, "Kill this family. If they're disabled, I'll take responsibility. Double the reward." Susan never thought that her daughter would be so cruel. No matter how much she begged and pleaded, the thugs just kept hitting her. My situation wasn't much better. I curled up into a ball, holding my head tightly with both hands, trying to protect my body. I felt intense pain all over my body. Olivia's loud laughter sounded in my ears like the most cruel curse. "Laugh now. Soon, you won't be able to laugh anymore." After a while, a voice rang out in the noisy alley. The voice was familiar, but the speaker sounded arrogant and cruel. "Humph, blocking my path and thinking you can get away with it? Are you daydreaming?" The people who had been beating me were suddenly pulled away roughly. I felt a beam of light envelop my body. I looked up and saw Jackson standing there lazily, his hands in his pockets. His eyes were narrow and slanted. They looked cold and cruel, and they made me feel scared. The thugs he brought with him were now fighting the men who had been attacking us earlier. Amid Olivia's piercing screams that split the sky, she was actually accidentally injured by the thugs she had brought with her. A sharp knife was plunged straight into her abdomen. Bright red blood poured out like a fountain, flowing freely. I quickly looked away because I felt sick. "You little punk, is that all the guts you've got?" A voice full of sarcasm and disdain came from above. I forced myself to speak, my voice cold and harsh. "Her blood is too dirty, too filthy to even look at." Under Jackson's surprised gaze, I took advantage of the chaos and stabbed Olivia, who was lying on the ground, once more. At that moment, she had already lost too much blood and was lying in a deep coma. Her face was pale and looked like she was not breathing. Also, Susan was being badly beaten by the local thugs. I took the opportunity to hit her several times and stomp on her with all my strength, finally feeling a little better. The sirens of police cars and ambulances grew louder as they got closer. I leaned against the wall, lowering myself to the ground, and tilted my head to look at Jackson, who was still standing in the same spot. "Aren't you leaving, you ungrateful little bastard? Using me and then trying to abandon me?" Jackson snorted and turned his head away, looking disgusted. He waved his hand casually, and the well-trained thugs behind him scattered, leaving a mess and chaos in their wake. I looked over at my younger brother Leo, who was very scared. His crying was still as unique as ever, and it was irritating to the ears. I got up and walked over to him, handing him the plastic bags filled with snacks. I put the voice recorder in the inner pocket of his backpack, out of his sight. "Stop crying." He pushed me away, glaring angrily at me, holding the snack bags tightly to his chest, and shouted, "It's all your fault. It's all your fault. You lazy person. You bring nothing but bad luck. If you hadn't told me the school was giving out scholarships on Friday, we wouldn't have come here. Dad and Mom wouldn't have been beaten up." I gave a casual shrug and didn't say anything. Before the police and paramedics arrived, I leaned against the wall, pretending to be shaking and scared. At the hospital, I looked pale and innocent on the hospital bed, waiting for a kind female police officer to take my statement. "So you're saying that on your way home from school, you happened to come across two groups of people fighting, and then you accidentally got caught up in it?" I nodded, trying not to cry, and said, I was supposed to go home with my parents, but when I got there, they had already been beaten up. The two groups were fighting fiercely, and I and one of my classmates just happened to pass by and got caught up in it." "Then what about these injuries on your body? They don't look like fresh scars. If you have any other questions, please ask us. We'll do our best to help you." I acted like I was upset, holding the bedsheet tightly, shaking my head quickly, then forced a smile that looked worse than crying, and whispered, These are all. I hurt myself by accident. It's okay, really." Just as the police officer was about to say something else, The ward door suddenly opened from the outside. My biological mother, Mrs. Sterling, walked in slowly, her fancy high heels making noise on the floor. She looked at the wounds on my body. They had been reopened and worsened. Her eyes showed an impossible mix of emotions. "Can I talk to Ava for a minute?" The room was soon empty, just the two of us. I was given a report from a DNA test. Right after that, Mrs. Sterling said something. Her voice sounded a little cold. "You are my child." I looked at the words paternity test on the report, and my body shivered. Then, as if something had burned me, I tore the report into pieces. I gave a smile that felt bitter, and my dry lips trembled slightly as I said in a hoarse voice, "Mrs. Sterling, please don't joke with me anymore. I promise I didn't tell anyone that Olivia had people come to beat me and my family today. You don't need to go to such lengths to test me." Mrs. Sterling looked at me closely and her tone of voice became cold and unfriendly. "I'm not negotiating with you. I'm letting you know. The Sterling family's bloodline mustn't fall into the wrong hands. Ava, you look so much like me. Can't you see that yourself?" I had spent years living in David's household. I was barely able to feed myself. I was starving to the point of emaciation. My face was gaunt and haggard from malnutrition. The resemblance between my face and that of the Sterling matriarch before me was striking. I didn't say anything. Mrs. Sterling didn't let me speak. She said, "What happened between you and Olivia was an accident. In 1 week, the Sterling family will officially take you back. Your father will host a big reunion dinner for you, fixing this mistake that should never have happened." She took out her new smartphone from her expensive Hermes platinum bag, gave it to me, and gave me a few simple instructions. Then she sighed and left the ward. I looked at the number I had saved in my phone contacts, and my lips curled into a cold smile. "The Sterling family, I'm back. Are you all ready?" I was taken back to the Sterling residence without any problems. I returned to this fancy-looking villa that felt both familiar and unfamiliar, and my heart was surprisingly calm. In the big, bright living room, Mr. Sterling, my real dad, was leaning against a fancy leather sofa. He was looking at me, and I could see that he was a little surprised. After all, to these upper-class people, I was nothing more than a naive country girl who had never seen the world. Now, standing in this fancy place, I didn't look nervous or uncomfortable. Instead, I looked calm and relaxed, which surprised them. I stood quietly in the center of the living room, carrying my old, faded backpack, without saying a word. Mrs. Sterling noticed this and looked a little upset. She reminded me, "Ava, this is your father." I looked down and said quietly, "I'm a little tired. May I go back to my room to rest for a while?" Mrs. Sterling was clearly even more displeased by my cold attitude. "You ungrateful child, don't you have any manners? You want good grades, but you can't get them. You want to be able to do things, but you can't. If I had known you'd be raised into such disgrace, I should have just let you die outside." I finished the sentence she hadn't dared to say aloud. Mrs. Sterling's face went pale with anger, and she trembled. Mr. Sterling finally spoke up. "There's a banquet tonight. Let her go back to her room to rest first. She'll need to be well rested to handle tonight's events." With just one sentence, he decided my fate. In the end, the housekeeper took me to a big, bright guest room on the second floor. I stared at the large mirror that had been hastily purchased, looking at the weak, skinny person in the mirror, and couldn't help but freeze. It had been a very long time since I had last looked at myself like this. In the evening, Mrs. Sterling had the maid bring me a sky-blue floor-length evening gown. The long skirt covered the scars on my legs. It was very thoughtful of her to remember that. The Sterling family cares a lot about their reputation and how other people see them. They would never let me bring dishonor to them tonight. In my previous life, when I met a tragic end on the rooftop, their cold and heartless behavior was likely because my disgraced reputation had shamed them in public. They preferred Olivia, who was obedient and well-behaved, because she could better preserve the family's dignity. "Ava, I have to go to the hospital to take care of Olivia. When the banquet starts, stay close to your father, don't talk too much, and smile often. Do you understand?" Mrs. Sterling looked at me in the mirror, now fully made up and styled, and finally showed a hint of satisfaction on her face. After giving me more instructions, she quickly left. After she was attacked in the alley last time, Olivia was in a coma for a week. Whether it was a real coma or a fake one, only the devil knew. I got up from the table next to the bed, I walked to the spiral staircase and looked down at the busy scene below. People were talking and laughing. I suddenly realized something. Instead of trying so hard to bring down the Sterling family, I should find a way to directly inherit their money. Then, using the Sterling family's influence, I could take down the Lancaster family and finally put an end to that psychopath Lucas. The Sterling family only has one child, and there will only ever be one. Little brat, are you the so-called true heiress who was switched at birth? I heard a voice in my ear. It was mocking and amused. I looked away silently, and saw that Jackson had changed into a black suit that looked like it was made just for him. His long arms were resting on the railing on the stairs. He looked rebellious and charming, like he always does. Jackson, do you want to take down the Lancaster family? He paused for a moment after hearing this, then laughed a little and replied, Want to? Who wouldn't want to defeat the arrogant Lancaster family? You should know that the Lancaster family has been the most powerful family in this coastal city for many years. Even if our Knight family and your Sterling family joined forces, we'd still be no match for the Lancaster family. I copied his tone, made a mocking noise, and replied, Do you really think a kid like me could do that? If anyone else had heard my words, they would have dismissed them as the ramblings of an uninformed child. He just smiled and didn't say anything more about it. Miss Ava, I heard a low, magnetic voice from behind me. When I heard that voice, I felt my spine go cold, and I froze in place. Jackson saw that I was nervous and immediately stood in front of me, blocking most of my body. He spoke in his usual lazy tone. Oh, isn't this Mr. Lancaster? Why aren't you downstairs entertaining your guests? What brought you here? Lucas's eyes, which were deep and full of care, were on me. He said in a voice that was a little rough, My younger sister is in the same class as Miss Ava. I just wanted to say hello. As soon as he finished speaking, a soft and gentle voice sounded. Chloe had appeared from behind Lucas at some point. She stood there elegantly, calling my name affectionately. Ava, you finally made it. Lucas looked away from me. My heart had been beating really fast because of the pressure, but it finally started to slow down. I quickly collected myself and replied calmly, Thank you. The mood suddenly became uncomfortable and tense. Jackson noticed this and immediately told Lucas, Mr. Lancaster, I have a new project here with some details I'd like to discuss with you. Why don't we give these young ladies some space to chat? What do you think? Lucas nodded slightly to show that he agreed. As he turned to leave, he looked at me again. I couldn't be sure if it was just my imagination, but I swear I saw a hint of relentless obsession and madness in his eyes. It was the same look he had when he locked me in that cold bed and tortured me without mercy. I looked down, trying to hide the intense hatred in my eyes. Ava, the first round of the knowledge contest is next month. Are you sure you really want to participate? Chloe looked at me worriedly and asked quickly. I propped my chin on my hand, and my face showed that I wanted to go with him. Before, I was too scared to get too close to him because there was an impossible gap between us. But now, I am the true heiress of the Sterling family, so, I want to give myself another chance. It's a chance to show everyone what he really is and to make sure that the innocent girls he hurt get justice. Chloe heard this and clearly froze for a moment. I didn't miss the brief look of disdain that flashed in her eyes. I looked down, lowered my head, and played with my fingers shyly. She had known all along that, with my bad grades, I was not able to take part in any preliminary competition, but she had gone out of her way to reserve a spot for me a long time ago, just to humiliate me again. If I didn't go along with her, how could I disappoint her kind intentions? Well, you better do your best. Even if you fail, it's okay. She smiled and said it casually. Chloe, why does your brother have the last name Lancaster, but you have the last name Xie? I suddenly thought of something and asked, confused, out of the blue. It felt like something exploded in my mind. I really wanted to hear a clear answer from her. I'm my father's daughter from a different marriage. In our family, only boys take their dad's last name. I took my mother's last name. So Ethan is also your brother? My eyes were sharp and focused on hers, detecting even the slightest change in her expression. Her eyes moved quickly for a moment, but she nodded slightly to show that she saw it. So, Ava, if you really like my second brother, I'll do my best to help you two get together. She blinked her eyes playfully, trying to use this method to break the awkward and tense atmosphere. The formal dinner began. Mr. Sterling was initially worried that I would embarrass the Sterling family by being nervous, but it turned out he had overthought it. I wanted to win over the entire Sterling family, so I had to make sure they all believed that I was the only qualified heir to the Sterling family. Therefore, the first impression during this initial meeting absolutely could not afford even the slightest mistake. Mr. Sterling was clearly very satisfied with my performance. In the dark, a strong and obvious gaze followed me like a shadow, never leaving my side. I looked over to see who was talking to me, and it was Lucas. When he saw me looking at him, he didn't look away. Instead, he smiled at me. That smile made Chloe, who was standing beside him, extremely happy. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the look in Chloe's eyes as she stared at Lucas. It was a look that showed a love that was almost too strong and a little crazy. That look was similar to the way I used to look when I was in love with Ethan. Chloe was in love with her own brother. The darkness that had clouded my mind for so long suddenly disappeared, and I felt free. Everything that had seemed unrelated suddenly made sense. When I first started high school, everyone bullied me because of my lowly background, but Ethan was the first to stand up for me like a true hero, earning my complete trust. If he had known about Lucas's obsessive and almost perverted possessiveness, if he had known about Lucas's terrifying nature, which would drive him completely mad for the sake of so-called love, and if he had known that Lucas had instructed her to carefully plan all of this, we still need a chance to slowly verify whether all of this is really what I suspect it to be. The drama between Olivia and me, the fake and real heiresses, spread quickly back to school. The people who had bullied me in the past were now quiet. They were silent and shaking. I looked at my desk. It was finally clean and tidy. I let out a sigh of relief. Sometimes, when something is done wrong, it can never be fixed. In the end, there is no forgiveness. Cheryl and the other main bullies were forced by their parents to kneel before me, sobbing and begging for forgiveness. I wasn't surprised by the result. Not long ago, Mr. Sterling was surprised and confused that I never wore clothes that showed any skin on my legs. I had simply replied that students should focus on their studies, and I didn't like flashy outfits. But when I accidentally fell down the stairs and showed the horrible scars that had been hidden under my clothes, he got very angry. He sent people to the school right away to investigate what Olivia and the other bullies had done to me. When he learned the truth, he slapped Mrs. Sterling hard across the face. That's right. I did it on purpose. Ava, we were wrong. We really know we were wrong. But this has nothing to do with our parents. You don't have to involve our family. Cheryl was crying so much her face was red, and she was sniffling and wiping away tears as she kept bowing her head in front of me, begging desperately. I looked at the four people in front of me. They were once so confident, but now they looked like they needed help. I didn't show any emotion. Olivia, the mastermind behind it all, was still in the hospital, playing the role of a vegetative state patient. She'd better pray to heaven that she can keep up this lucky act for the rest of her life. I smiled and said, "Is there any way your parents could be hurt? Don't worry. I haven't reached the point of being so heartless as to kill innocent people." When they heard this, they immediately started to thank me. Unfortunately, they were too happy too soon. I did say I wouldn't involve their families, but I never said I would spare them, did I? Soon after, these students began dropping out of Crestview High School one after another. The reason was that several shocking videos of school bullying suddenly began circulating online and quickly went viral across major social media platforms, causing a huge uproar. In this technological age, we can see the young and ugly faces of bullies. Many people who saw this online went to Crestview High School. The school administration felt pressure from the public, and so they decided to stop protecting these people. After people found out what they did, they were treated like outcasts. Everyone rejected and laughed at them. Wherever they went, people insulted and pointed fingers at them. Cyberbullying is scary, but they got what they deserved. After dealing with this group of mean bullies, Mr. Sterling started to like me more. He realized that I was more worthy of cultivation and had more potential than Olivia, who was nothing but trouble. To him, I was the good seed worth investing his time and effort into nurturing. The semifinals of the knowledge competition were coming soon. I was working non-stop, going through practice problems. During the day, I stayed awake and went along with that brother and sister scheming. I played the role of an uninformed, unintelligent, and even foolish and ridiculous idiot. The real estate development project in the West District should officially start soon. In my previous life, it was the Lancaster family who ultimately secured this project. This project helped the Lancaster family grow their wealth and power quickly. If they don't get this project, the Lancaster family might lose their place as the top family in High City. So, I took advantage of the situation and invited Jackson to meet with me. After I explained the project to Jackson, he looked a little surprised. He might have been very puzzled. How could someone like me, who had never had any exposure to the upper echelons of society in the past decade or so, know so much about the inner workings and secrets of business operations? However, he remained polite, keeping quiet and not asking any questions. He treated me like an equal friend, listening as I explained my plans. I admired this about him. He knew how to respect others and never looked down on anyone. This is exactly why I chose him as my partner from the start. Hey kid, if I get this project, I'll buy you a big gift. Jackson smiled and gently patted my head. I was surprised, and quickly looked away to stop him from touching me. I said quietly, if you finish this project, I'll work with you again. Bringing down the Lancaster family will be the best prize you can give me. He heard this and just gave a non-committal, streetwise smile, saying nothing more. I knew that this matter was settled. The day of the National Middle School Physics Knowledge Competition preliminary round arrived quickly. Chloe stood before me with a smile, encouraging me softly. Ava, you have to do your best. Even if you don't do well, it's okay. Just don't leave any blank spaces. I looked at the table where she had specially prepared a love breakfast for me. Then I pretended to look behind her and said, Ethan. Just as she turned her head to look, I quickly swapped the two identical breakfasts on the table. Ethan walked over. His almond-shaped eyes, usually filled with a hint of carelessness and gentle laughter, were now focused on me as he whispered, Ava, you have to do your best. I acted shy and lowered my head, but inside, I was calm and focused. Work harder? Of course I would work harder. Under Chloe's occasional concerned glances, I ate the loving breakfast I had switched with mine without feeling bad. When she saw this, she smiled and finished her breakfast. As I walked into the exam room, I smiled at the brother and sister and said in a playful tone, Ethan, Chloe, you both need to try your best. I walked into the exam room with confidence, seeing the confused and puzzled expressions on their faces. After going through so many difficult days, it had been a long time since I felt so confident and relaxed. I needed to become the happy, self-assured person I used to be. After the competition ended, the tension that had been building up finally went down a bit. David's school was very strict and difficult. The only thing that made me happy was studying. Before entering high school, I always received a scholarship every year. One time, a famous university teacher came to our remote mountain area to teach. He said to me, you were born to be a great student. If it weren't for the constant bullying and oppression that upset me, I wouldn't have lost my way and the meaning of life. After the competition ended, Chloe and Ethan found me together. When I said, this time the questions seem pretty easy, they smiled in a way that showed they didn't like it. I looked at Chloe's pale face, and I felt calm and clear-headed. Before I knew it, it was time to announce the competition rankings and scores. I did really well on the test and won first place in the preliminary round. This made me the center of attention again, like it always does. Chloe got 45th place, which was just enough to qualify for the semifinals at our school. Ethan, however, looked at me with a sad face. He came in second, losing to me again. Why did I say once again? Before I was bullied, I was the best student in school. It was only during my first semester of freshman year, when I was a target of bullying, that my grades temporarily dropped to third place. As the situation got worse, I had to temporarily hide my sharp edges, deal with embarrassment, and survive by any means necessary. Ava, congratulations. The brother and sister were putting on a show, fake smiling and saying things that didn't mean anything. I smiled awkwardly, rubbed the back of my head, and said, pretending to be emotional, the days when I could study in peace were the happiest. The Sterling family learned that I had placed first in the preliminary round, and Mr. Sterling was very happy. He immediately sent $1 million to my bank account as a reward. I thought of the $10,000 hush money that Mrs. Sterling had given me at the hospital, and I felt a complex and indescribable feeling in the depths of my eyes. I arrived at the hospital and looked at Olivia, who was still lying in the hospital bed but looked unusually healthy. My lips moved slightly. Olivia, I won first place in the preliminary round of the competition. She didn't react at all. I kicked Cheryl and the others out of Crestview High School. She didn't respond. Ethan said that after the last round, he wants to go on a date with me. Her breathing seemed to change a little. Good. I'm pretty sure she's faking being unconscious. I felt a cold chill run down my spine, and I smiled slightly. I wanted to see how long she could keep this up. A month later, the knowledge competition officially entered the semifinals. This time, Chloe didn't use any sneaky tactics. The two siblings seemed eager to move past their humiliation in the preliminary round. Since then, they had been studying hard and working hard. After the semifinals, I came in first place in the province. The two of them looked like they were feeling sad and hopeless. Chloe didn't make it to the finals. Her already weak body, made weaker by birth, was completely exhausted by the ordeal, leaving her bedridden in the hospital, in need of rest. Ethan barely managed to come in third in the province. During this time, he became more and more gentle and considerate with me, taking care of me in every way. I knew he was getting ready to attack me. I just didn't know how much longer he could last. When I returned to the Sterling home, I found that Olivia, who should have been unconscious in the hospital, had already returned. Mrs. Sterling held my hand and spoke to me in a gentle tone. Let's move on from the past. Ava, you've finally overcome your struggles. From now on, get along well with Olivia, okay? Olivia saw this and immediately stepped forward, though her face still showed some reluctance. She was the first to apologize to me. In the past, I didn't know any better. Anyway, you're doing well now, right? Let's start over. Start over? That's ridiculous. I've said it before, I slowly recovered from my struggles. How could the people who pushed me into hell expect me to just go on living as if nothing happened? I put on a warm smile and quietly said, Mom, the David family is still missing a daughter. You're forcing your way back into their lives like this, and it's a bit inappropriate, isn't it? A knife only feels pain when it's cutting into your own flesh. Olivia must leave the Sterling family. She must be punished for the bad things she has done. Mrs. Sterling looked shocked. She spoke hesitantly. You know what kind of people David and his wife are. If Olivia really goes back, what good will come of it? Can't you two just move in together and make a good life for yourselves? Olivia immediately looked sad, and with a pleading look, she said to me, Ava, I've worked for the Sterling family for 17 years. This place has already become my home. I smiled, looking down at her. You too may want it, but that doesn't mean others feel the same way. On the eve of the final, I called David. Do you want to pay back the high-interest loans you took out back then? His tone, which had been full of hostility and caution, changed completely when he heard those words, becoming overly respectful and flattering. Oh, my dear daughter, your father heard that you're doing well at the Sterling family's place. What is this? Have you finally remembered your father's kindness? Do you remember when you were sick with a high fever as a child, and your cruel mother refused to take you to the hospital? It was your father who carried you on his back in the middle of the night, knocking on the doors of every small clinic. He started talking about how close they were, trying to make it seem like they had a strong family connection. I couldn't stop sneering inside. Not letting me die? I was useful to him back then. I'm not stupid. If my grades weren't good enough for the scholarships, they would have already planned to sell me to an old widower in the village as his wife. I sounded casual and not worried. If you want, come find me at the Liginguin Villa complex in the eastern suburbs after this competition ends. Liginguin was where all the top business leaders in Haicheng lived. Ethan's personal villa was located right there. When he heard this, he immediately agreed, very excited. I went to the capital to take part in the national physics competition for middle school students. After the results were announced, I won first place nationwide and made it into the national training team. Because of this, I was accepted into Stanford University early. The news made the school and the Sterling family very excited. I soon received an invitation from Ethan to go on a date. I pretended to be excited and got dressed up at home. Olivia, seeing how serious I was, asked, a little jealous, "What are you planning to do?" I smiled and replied, "Oh, Ethan invited me to his house to celebrate our one-on-one date." The little flirtation between Ethan and me was already common knowledge among the Sterling family. Mr. Sterling, realizing that Ethan was Lucas's younger brother, initially refused, but after I begged him enough, and since I had recently made the Sterling family proud, he finally agreed. Olivia's face immediately went from happy to angry. That evening, before I could go on a date, someone drugged me. Olivia went in my place, excitedly heading off to meet Ethan. That night, I excitedly opened my laptop, lay comfortably on the bed, sipped freshly squeezed juice slowly, and watched the surveillance footage being sent to the computer screen as it happened. In the video, Olivia arrived as agreed, her face showing she was shy. When Ethan saw her, he looked a little surprised and asked, "Where's Ava?" Olivia replied in a fake tone of hurt. She said she doesn't like you, so she sent me instead. The sound from my phone, which was lying next to me, was ringing non-stop. I pretended not to hear it and didn't plan to answer. After a long time, Ethan saw that none of the messages he had sent had been replied to, and he looked upset. He looked up, his eyes, which usually seemed so deep and loving, now fixed on Olivia standing at the door. He spoke in a gentle voice. "It's not good to be out here. I have a question about Ava. Can you come in and talk to me about it?" Olivia heard this and immediately nodded excitedly. I smiled. "Once you go in, it'll be hell for you." Olivia went missing. After I was accepted into the university, I didn't want to see Ethan again, so I lied and said I was sick so I could stay home and rest. The Sterling family was looking for her everywhere, and they were making a lot of noise. Even during the chaos, I was able to eat those expensive imported fruits without feeling bad. I even called David. David heard there was money to be made, so he didn't hesitate. He used the password I gave him to unlock the door to Ethan's villa. Then, following my instructions, he went straight to the basement of their house, which was very deep inside. When the heavy basement door slowly opened, he was completely stunned. There were many arms and legs and large glass containers filled with formaldehyde. The freshest one was Olivia, still chained to a cold operating table with her right hand cut off at the wrist. I pretended to be innocent on the phone and said, "Oh my, it seems like I must have misunderstood. That's where my boyfriend hides his secret stash of money. His family is so rich. I'll go to the bank this weekend and transfer the money directly to your account." In the video, David's expression subtly changed at that moment. He said, Okay, I'll send you my bank account number as soon as I get back." I smiled more. Before Olivia went to the meeting, I had secretly hidden a tiny camera in her earrings. In my previous life, I had heard Lucas mention many of Ethan's disturbing rumors. At the time, I refused to believe any of it. Now it seemed he was even more cruel and evil than I had ever imagined. Later, David also went missing. Susan, with Leo's eyes swollen from crying, hurried to the front door of the Sterling house, throwing a fit and causing a scene. I went out and invited them inside. I gently took the worn-out backpack from Leo's hands and said softly, "Let's talk inside." When Susan screamed at me, asking where David was, I replied, "I don't know." She immediately became very angry, shouting at Mr. and Mrs. Sterling. She insisted that I had sent money to David. She said that after he came to find me, he had mysteriously disappeared. So, she demanded that the Sterling family explain things to the E family. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling were already very worried about Olivia's disappearance, and now they were being driven to the brink of madness by her screams. They immediately turned cold and ordered their servants to escort the mother and son out of the Sterling residence. I held the voice recorder that had been sitting there. I couldn't help but smile. David and Susan, that awful couple, had done many dishonest things over the years, but I never expected this. It turns out that the time Olivia and I swapped identities years ago wasn't an accident. Susan had planned it all. I carefully saved the contents of the voice recorder, uploaded them to the cloud to keep them safe, and then anonymously posted all the surveillance footage from the basement that I had obtained from Olivia online. Ethan was arrested. His dark and evil hideout was spreading quickly across the internet, causing many people to be angry and upset. Ethan was done. The Lancaster family's reputation took a big hit overnight, and the company almost went bankrupt. At the same time, the investigation I had Jackson conduct into the Lancaster family's underground illegal animal fighting ring finally produced significant results. When Olivia was finally rescued, she had gone completely mad and was delirious. She glared at me with hate in her eyes and screamed, "You knew all along. You knew he was a pervert. You deliberately sent me there to die in your place." I laughed. Which foolish person deliberately put drugs in my drink and then went into a dangerous situation to die? This isn't anyone else's fault. I was wondering how I could kick Olivia out of the Sterling family. She was pretending to be someone else. Then she did it herself. She had the nerve to poison everyone in the Sterling family with a deadly toxin. Luckily, I was with Jackson at the time, researching the underground arena of the Lancaster family, and narrowly escaped the disaster. The Sterling couple was poisoned, but they were rushed to the hospital in time and survived. but their bodies were permanently damaged, and they will never be as healthy as they used to be. When they learned the whole truth, they finally lost all hope for Olivia, their evil adopted daughter. They personally sent her to prison. At 17, it was time for her to face the consequences of her crimes. Meanwhile, Jackson exposed the Lancaster family's underground illegal animal fighting ring to the public. The Lancaster family was completely destroyed. Lucas was also sent to prison. On the day he was officially put in jail, I went to visit him. His lips, which had always seemed a little cold and mocking, were now managing to make him smile. "Ava, you're more cunning than I ever imagined." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly pulled out a black handgun from his pocket. The cold, black barrel was pointed right at me. He smiled, then, without hesitation, shot himself in front of me. I watched his body slowly collapse in a pool of blood, and my lips moved silently. Madman. I may never know why Lucas tried to target me for so many years, but it doesn't matter anymore. He's dead. It's just that his death was a bit too easy for him. Later, Chloe called me. "Ava, I didn't realize that my two brothers were such people. Can you come over and keep me company?" She paused, her voice shaking with sadness, and then she continued, I really don't want to lose you, my only friend." The doctor said my congenital heart disease can't be cured. Can we see each other one last time? Jackson, sitting across from me, raised an eyebrow. His eyes seemed to ask, "Are you going?" I nodded. How could I not go? After all, she was the cause of all this evil, so let her end where she began, right? I arrived as promised, but then Chloe kidnapped me. Chloe took me to an old warehouse that had been empty for a long time. Her face looked different. It wasn't the innocent, harmless smile she had before. She looked at me with anger and a desire for revenge. She screamed, Why did they all die? But you're still alive?" I lowered my head, looked at the ropes binding me tightly, then looked up at her and acted confused. "Chloe, what are you doing? I know your loved ones have all met with misfortune, and you must be heartbroken, but you can't take it out on me." Chloe seemed really angry. She immediately screamed, "Stop talking. It's all your fault. If it weren't for you, Lucas wouldn't have let you off the hook over and over again. You shouldn't even be here. You shouldn't have been seen by him." Here, I finally understood why Lucas had been targeting me. He had been doing it on purpose. I looked like the white moonlight Lucas had loved in his youth. During the worst time of his life, Lucas was really struggling. It was the sight of the white moonlight that helped him get through it. But before he could tell her how he felt, she was unkind to him. He had mixed feelings about her, with complicated emotions. In the end, he even killed the woman who had once been the only light in his life. When he unexpectedly met me again and saw that I looked like the white moonlight, he immediately started to focus on me again. He put up with Chloe and Ethan, the brother and sister, bullying and tormenting me, because he remembered how the white moonlight had once betrayed and hurt him through me. He chose to shoot himself in front of me, in Chloe's eyes, because that was the most extreme expression of love he could muster for the moonlight in his heart. When I heard this, I couldn't help but laugh in disdain. Madman, a family of madmen. I don't know anything about the moonlight they're talking about. Just because I look a little like that person doesn't mean my life has to be terrible too. Ava, let's just go die together, okay? Chloe's emotions seemed to finally calm down. She once again revealed her strange smile, staring intently at me. She then lit the straw she had prepared earlier, igniting the gasoline that had been poured around the warehouse. Under her gaze, which was filled with fear and disbelief, I quickly cut the ropes binding me and kicked her to the ground with a smile. "I don't want to die yet. My life was supposed to be amazing. I don't want to die like this, in this dirty, disgusting corner. If you want to die, then die yourself." There was a lot of thick smoke, and the flames went up into the sky. I didn't pay any attention to Chloe, who was lying on the ground, crying and laughing like a crazy person. I ran as fast as I could to the warehouse door. Chloe died in the fire she had started. I returned from hell, endured countless hardships, and will eventually embrace the light, reborn through the flames.